So after studying Arne Slot's hugely successful first season at Anfield, it got me thinking, looking at his team selection throughout the season, looking at the players he's looking to move on, and looking at the players that he's bringing in or has already brought in. And I think he's on a mission. I think he's on a mission maybe to a degree that we've never even seen before. And I want to get into it as to why I'm thinking that way. So to do so, I need to go back in time a little bit, here and there, before I get into the Arne Slot piece. So I'll start with where we were when Jurgen Klopp came to the club. He came in October 2015 and we were 10th in the league and going absolutely nowhere. Klopp's first team was Mignolet, Moreno, Saka, Skrtel, Klein, Chan, Lucas, Lallana, Coutinho, Origi, and up front on the right, James Milner. The bench was Adam Bodan, Kolo Toure, Conor Randall, Joe Allen, Jordan Ibe, Teixeira and Jerome Sinclair. At that point of the season, we'd won 3, drawn 3, lost 2. We'd scored 8 goals and had a goal difference of -2. And the 8 goals that we'd scored were the same as 2 of the teams in the bottom 3. So he took over a really quite dismal situation. Suffice to say, Jurgen had a hell of a job on his hands. You look back on that and you think, why did he take it? Because he had to basically revamp the entire squad. So I'll fast forward as to what he achieved in the time he was at the club to his last game, the lineup of his last game. It's not just the lineup. You just heard the first lineup and the substitutes. Listen to his last lineup. His final lineup included Alisson, Trent, Robertson, McAllister, Salah, Endo, Gakpo, Diaz, and on the bench were Bradley, Gomez, Gravenberch, Jones, Kelleher, Konate, Nunez, Szoboszlai and Jota. The difference, incredible. The way he revamped that team, he almost worked a miracle to get from where he was to winning titles in European Cups and to leave Arne Slot with that stellar group of players who, by the way, remember, only missed out on the league title in the last 4 or 5 games of the previous season before Klopp left. So Slot, this is where it gets interesting with Slot. Slot's first team against Ipswich on 17th of August 2024 was Alisson, Trent, Van Dijk, Kwanzaa, Robertson, Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Salah, Jota, Diaz. On the bench were Kelleher, Konate, Costas, Bradley, Endo, Jones, Elliott, Nunez and Gakpo. If you go through all of last season, that entire team that he picked on the first day, with the exception of Kwanzaa, who he pulled out at half-time on that first day, basically became the core of the entire season. And you've got 9 of that first 11 that he picked that became absolute fixtures in the team. The only ones you would say from that first game, Jota got himself injured and Gakpo came in. And as I say, Kwanzaa for Konate. The rest of them made up the bulk of the season. They were his go-to team. So the team that he had analysed and studied and put on the field on day 1 became his team, with others filling in here and there. And that leads to what this video is all about. I think he's on a mission to create the elite team. I don't just mean an elite team, I mean an elite team full of elite individuals, and that is rarely, if ever, been seen. Look at the PSG of a few years ago. They loaded their team up with elite individuals and the team wasn't any good. I think Slot is attempting to forge the greatest elite team there's ever been, with an elite player in every single position, including on the bench. So you might be saying to yourself, well, hang on a minute, Liverpool have had elite teams before. And we've had elite teams. We had teams in the 70s and 80s that conquered everything, right? So yeah, we had an elite team, but were those elite teams full of elite players? I would say back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, what teams did is they had teams of several superstars. For us, you know, the likes of Rush and Dalglish and Kevin Keegan and Graham Souness and Alan Hansen and those type of players, John Barnes, Robbie Fowler. And then you had very functional players. So I'll give you an example. When we were winning European Cups and leagues back in the 70s and 80s, we had players like Alan Kennedy, Ogrizovic as backup goalkeeper. We had Joey Jones, Phil Neal, Jimmy Case, Sammy Lee. We had one season where our entire forward line, we won the league by the way, but our entire forward line was David Fairclough, Kenny Dalglish, Kevin Cooley, you won't even remember him, he hardly ever played, John Toshak and Davy the Doc Johnson. In 78-79, the season after that front line, John Toshak moved on and Kevin Cooley moved on. And all we added was Howard Gale. So the forward line was Fairclough, Dalglish, Johnson and Gale. So yeah, we were winning titles, but I think naming all those players, by the way, great players, don't get me wrong, I'm not putting anyone down here, but very, very functional players. You know, you wouldn't say Sammy Lee was the greatest midfielder in the world or Jimmy Case. Great players. I don't want anyone to think I'm downplaying them. I'm just making the point about the word elite. Kenny Dalglish was elite. John Barnes, Ian Rush, Alan Hansen, Mark Lawrenson, Stevie Nicol. These were elite players. Move on to 83-84 as another example. Our goalkeepers were Bruce Grobbelaar and Bob Boulder. Not Bob the Builder, Bob Boulder. Then we had, as defenders, we had Jim Beglin, Alan Kennedy, Hansen, Gillespie, Lawrenson, Neal, Nicol. So I would say several elite players across that bunch in defence. But in goalkeepers, we had just Grobbelaar and Boulder. Up front, again, we won the league, but we had Dalglish, David Hodgson, Michael Robinson and Ian Rush. They were our four strikers in 83-84. Ian Rush scored 32 goals that season. The next best from any of our players was 7 from Kenny Dalglish and Graham Souness. The midfield, by the way, was Craig Johnson, Sammy Lee, Graham Souness, John Walk and Ronnie Whelan. So again, I'll make the point, or try and make the case. It was a core of elite players, and then the rest of the squad were very, very, very good players who were highly functional at what they did, but not elite. And the team ended up winning. That was the successful mix back then, and has been the successful mix for many, many teams over the years. Let's get back to this theory of mine that Slot is on a mission to create an elite team with every player being an elite individual. Jurgen Klopp's most effective team, I would suggest, consisted of many elite players, but not all. The elite players were Salah, Bobby, Sadio Mane, Trent, Virgil, Robbo, Alisson, Fabinho, and you might put Wijnaldum in there. But Klopp also had in his squad that created all these records and did all these amazing things. He had Dejan Lovren, Naby Keita, Joe Gomez, Adrian in goal, Minamino, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Adam Lallana, James Milner. Every one of those players I just mentioned, in the season that we won the league, played 10 or more games. So we won it with, again, a core. I would say a bigger core in terms of the number of elite players, but supplemented by many very, very good but non-elite players. Are you following me? And this is where I wanted to get onto what Arne Slot is up to. It struck me when I was studying what he did at Feyenoord, where he walked in and he got rid of a whole slew of players almost immediately. He came in a pre-season, so he was able to analyse what he had and move out players. And again, I'll go back to the video I made a couple of months ago about the 7 attributes every player has to have to be a Slot player. And I'm convinced of this now, after watching and seeing what he's doing even more. And I'm going to get onto that in just a second. Slot last season just had to take on Klopp's team. He had to take the cards he was dealt and make the most of what he had. And what a brilliant job he did. Title winners in the first season. But going back to the beginning of the video, there were 9 players from day one that he trusted. And then there was a couple added to that, Gakpo and Konate, after day one. They became his core 11. And all of the others were fringe players. And I would suggest that those players that he picked invariably throughout that season were his elite players. And the fringe players are getting on a bit, or they don't have all the characteristics that are required to be an Arne Slot player. So I'm going to talk about what he's got right now. And I'm going to include in this the potential signings that look imminent of Wirtz and Kerkez. So right now, this is what I believe is Arne Slot's team next season. Alisson and Mamadashev, whatever his name is. I'll get it right by the time the season starts. Alisson's in his 30s, the other goalie's 24. Then you've got Bradley, Frimpong, Van Dijk, Konate and Kerkez. Bradley's 21, Frimpong's 24, Van Dijk's in his 30s, Konate's 26 and Kerkez is 21, 22. In the middle, you've got Szoboszlai, 24, McAllister, 26, Gravenberch, 23, Wirtz, 22 and Endo in his 30s. And then up front you've got Mo, 33, Gakpo, 26, Diaz, 28, Jota, 28. They're the ones I believe are going to make up the core, the bulk of Arne Slot's team next season. Now, who have I left out? I've left out Jaros, Gomez, Kwanzaa, Costas and Andy Robertson. Now, if Andy Robertson stays, he goes into that team. So, I hope he stays. But at the moment, I don't know. In midfield, I'm leaving out Tyler Morton, Bajcetic, Harvey Elliott, and Curtis Jones. I might be wrong with that one. And then up front, you've got Nunez, who I think is going to go, Chiesa, who he didn't fancy, and then you've got Ben Doak and you've got Dans as well. Youngsters. I think the team we're going to see next season, even if a couple of those stay, the Jones and Robertson, I think the team is going to be this. I think it's going to be Alisson, Frimpong, Van Dijk, Konate, Kerkez, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Mo Salah, Wirtz and Diaz or Gakpo. That's my guess. And I'm trying to make an educated guess based on the 7 attributes required by Arne Slot. So let's get on to that. The 7 attributes are technical ability, attitude, fight, heart, desire, speed of foot, speed of mind, decision making, controlled aggression, and positional discipline. They are the 7 I believe are critical to Slot. There is an 8th, and it is you got to stay fit. If you're going to be a Slot player, you've got to stay fit. If you're not capable of staying fit, you're of no use to him. I concluded, if you go across those, I'll just say the 7, and I'll leave the fitness thing till the end. But of the 7, Alisson has them all. So there's Frimpong, Virgil, Kerkez, Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, Endo, Wirtz, Mo, and then I'd say you've got 6 of them, Gakpo, who I think needs to be more aggressive, and Diaz, who I still think needs to improve his decision making. Now then, you've got a couple of others who don't make 6 or 7 of what Slot wants. And you've got Conor Bradley, who I think, and this is because he's young, not for no other reason, he's going to be brilliant. But technical ability, getting better all the time. Speed of foot, speed of mind, getting better. Not quite there yet because he's a youngster. And his decision making because of that as well. So I would say there are areas where Conor Bradley needs to improve, and that's why I think he's going to be second string to Frimpong. And then another one who is questionable in 3 of the 7 areas is Konate. Technical ability, great lots of the time, but does have some games where he just is not at it at all. Decision making, especially when diving in and getting too close, getting better at it, it's not there yet. And his controlled aggression, same thing, really. He's too aggressive in getting in on the tackle sometimes. So they're all the players I believe are going to be the core of the team next season. And then there's the 8th criteria, which I think might see Jota become surplus to requirements if he can't stay fit in this upcoming season. I think he's got a red circle around him because of his injury record with Slot. Another one is Konate, injury record. Another one is Conor Bradley. He's only been around a short period of time, he's young, he's growing, etc. But his injury record isn't great so far. Slot was given a set of elite players by Klopp and a set of fringe players, non-elite players by Klopp. And several of those he's already moved to the sides, the likes of Harvey Elliott, Costas, Kwanzaa, Gomez, another one with an injury record problem, by the way. So what he's got now, though, is the core, that group that I just talked about, the players that meet all the criteria for Arne Slot. And so I think he's already started phase 2. Phase 2 has started with, well, it started last season by leaving out the likes of Nunez and Elliott and Chiesa. But I think phase 2 is to phase out gradually. You can't do it all at once. You can't do it all in one transfer window. But he's got to phase out the non-elite players. Players who don't meet the 7 to 8 criteria required to be a Slot player. I think he's going to phase out even players that are elite but are aging, the likes of Andy Robertson. And he's going to phase out the sick notes. And he's already started to phase in the next batch of elite players, Frimpong, Kerkez and Wirtz. He's moving towards that vision I was talking about, what this video is all about, to create the perfect team. A team of 16, 17, 18 players who are all masters of their position, who are all incredibly technical, determined, great character, don't get injured, extremely high football and IQ, positionally brilliant, players that excel all over the field. I believe he is after a team and a squad that whoever he puts on the field is the best player in their position. I'm convinced this is what he's trying to do. I'm convinced that is why we have already splashed out almost 200 million on 3 players so far. That will come down a lot once we get rid of some of these players I'm talking about, the likes of Nunez and Chiesa and possibly Elliott, etc. But you watch, the next players that come in are going to be at the level of the 3 that we've just got, and at the level of the core of Jurgen Klopp's team, the ones that Arne Slot has deemed absolutely essential to his vision going forward. I think it's incredibly exciting what is going on behind the scenes here. And of course, he's got the perfect team behind him doing all the data analysis and the stats so that they know exactly who that next player is. that fits exactly and plugs in to this brilliant model that team and Arne Slot are putting together. And I think the future is looking unbelievably bright. I can't wait. Bill Shankly said he's going to build us up and up into a bastion of invincibility, conquer the bloody world. Everyone else would just give up. I think Arne Slot was listening. You'll never walk alone. See you soon. Ta-ra.